Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 451. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, the Duke of and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we are going to be talking about Secret Six number 8, Clean Room number 2, Superman Wonder Woman 22, Slash and Burn number 1, Batman number 46. We have a very packed episode. So without further ado, let's jump into, we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, the Infinite Comics.com. I'm inventing brand new words. Let's try it. The InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. I'm leaving that in just because it's goofy. Jim, we are sponsored this episode by, of course, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. What can you tell us about DCBService.com?
Well, as always, they've got great bundles. I've gone over it multiple times. They've got a really cool Vertigo bundle where they're continuing the new series, so you can keep supporting these new titles, and they're giving you a 50% off. So all 12 new Vertigo bundles are $24.38. But there's something else that I got to talk about. Y'all remember when we had the great movie on Hero Tomorrow? Well, Hero Tomorrow does have an ongoing comic, and it is Apama, the Undiscovered Animal, and trade paperback volume number 1 is now available on DCBS. That's right. It's a wonderful book. I know we've talked about it. We're going to have the people back on again to talk some more about this. This is a fun, cool story. Again, it's Apama, A-P-A-M-A, the Undiscovered Animal. It's through Hero Tomorrow Comics. And here's a cool thing. Of course, because DCBS is awesome, they're giving you a nice little discount. 30% off. Only $13.99 for this great trade paperback, volume number 1. Check it out.
Yeah, and it's a big collection. It's they recently released a hardcover collection of it. It's finally in trade paperbacks and available through previews. So it's great, an opportunity for it to get a new audience. If you haven't read this, it's fantastic. If you've seen the movie Hero Tomorrow, I look at it as this is what the main character was writing and drawing when he was coming up with Apama. So it really is kind of a different lens into that universe. And I really love that the comic book medium has opened up the world of Apama to tell us the stories that we wouldn't have been able to see that were happening on screen. It's really cool stuff. I'm a big fan of Apama, so I'm glad that we're going to be able to talk to the whole crew once again from Hero Tomorrow. Jim, over at InStockTrades.com, I want to shout this one out. It's the Batman the Golden Age Omnibus Hardcover Volume 1. This goes back to the roots with Detective Comics 27 to 56 and Batman issues 1 through 7. It includes the origin of the Dark Knight, as well as the debut of Robin, Commissioner Gordon, Professor Hugo Strange, the Joker, Catwoman, and more. It's 784 pages. This is a $75 book regularly, 50% off, only $37.50. If you do not have these issues, have never read them, I don't know how else you would want to get them than this omnibus. I mean, what a great way to get them at a deal. Before these things were available in those hardcover collections, that really one of those, which contained a far less page count, would have been that $37.50. So now to be able to get all of that content, 784 pages for $37.50 is insane. And that's InStockTrades.com, your collected edition source. Jim, before we go into our spoiler warning, I want to do a little quick shout out. I know our show release has been a little erratic, and some of that has been work issues for Jim and myself, but what I haven't really mentioned too much on the podcast, my father has been fighting a cancer battle. I know I mentioned it previously on the show quite a while ago, but he currently has stage 4 prostate cancer and has been given some really rough news lately about it. Because of that has taken some of my time and shifted it elsewhere. So that's why the show is on kind of an erratic schedule. We're still committed to putting out the podcast. In many ways, this show remains the therapy that it is. But I wanted to kind of explain to our listening audience, because obviously you're all friends of ours, whether you listen to every episode or casually, just kind of what's going on with the show and why it's been so erratic. We're committed to releasing 3 or 4 episodes a month still, and we will be doing that. We're going to get another November show in, so we will have 3 shows in November. That's what's going on with the podcast. So be patient with us. I'll be updating you on the website as far as when show releases are coming out, just so you guys are kind of in the loop that, oh, cool, another show's coming and when it's going to be. be. But just expect some sort of erratic behavior right now just because of that. I need to be flexible just because of family stuff, to be perfectly honest. That's kind of where we're at right now. So, stepping away from that for a second, Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Jim, our first discussion this episode is going to be of Secret Six, issue number 8, House of Strangers, Part 2. The writer is Gail Simone. The artists are Dale Eaglesham and Tom Derenick. The colors are by Jason Wright. Letters, Travis Lanham. Cover by Eaglesham and Wright. The associate editor is David Pina. The group editor is Jim Chadwick. Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. And this was not something that Jim and I planned on talking about on the show, but this week this book came out, and it was one of those, I love those comics that when you read it and pick it up, you go, I want to discuss this now, yesterday. This remains my favorite book right now being published. It's just fun. It's, you know what it is? For me, it's the balance of great humor without losing drama, dialogue, action. This feeling of danger to the characters that are in this story is always there. But yet the humor moments, I think that's really for me when humor, I think it's a lot smarter, is when you can have a book that's truly funny and has those moments that you truly chuckle, but you never lose this sense of danger and fear throughout it. And that's a balance that Gail Simone has in her writing that speaks to me as a reader. That's what I'm looking for. I like the balance of all of the puzzle pieces that Secret Six provides. It's a wicked fun book. So I really wanted to talk about this issue. And it was funny. You were like, when I logged on, I'm like, hey, what do you want to talk about first? And we were both kind of like, let's just talk about Six because it begs to be discussed.
It's funny because we could very easily turn this into the Gail Simone podcast and just talk about our books. We try not to only talk about Six and Clean Room and whatnot. We try to spread the love, but this issue, I tell you, everything you said about the humor and all that, but also every single time with Six, I love this artwork and I love just this beautiful blend of gore and beauty, because everything you're saying about just with that blend of comedy and violence and intrigue and all that. Yes. But also the artwork has that same type of blend.
Yes.
This is, you get some really horrific images that look absolutely really beautiful and really cool. And especially you start looking at background stuff and you notice little bits here, little bits there. And I was like, wow, this is one of those great blends of the stuff that I like in a book, both in the written word, in the visual art, the visual art side of it.
Dale Eagleham's artwork, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name correct, and if I'm not, apologies for any name butchery, was in that JSA run from Jeff Johns, which I just adored. It was really, just to me, I found the book to be a stunning display of great dialogue and great visuals. And I think that's always been a key to that book. For this book, it has everything that I liked about JSA. What that series really did for me was it was strong character drama. I got to know these characters, their interactions with each other. I got to see the formation of relationships, also times where the relationships had strife and difficulty between them. It added a reality to them. It was an ongoing drama, and that's that monthly drama that brings you in. This book has all of that with a villain group. And I don't even know if I guess you have to call them a villain group, but it almost seems like too simplistic a label for what the Six are. Misfits. Yeah. Misfits is probably a much better label for this group of people, is that they're misfits. But the one thing that I really like about this story in particular is Catman, we start to see him taking on more of a leadership role, which before, I don't know. I think it felt to me more like Big Shot was like kind of the lead guy in this. Catman now seems to be stepping forward and recognizing the importance of a team, whereas he was our loner in the beginning. And I love seeing him kind of advance and evolve as this series goes on. This new rendition of Catman has all of the tenets of what I dug about him before. In many ways, it's kind of a chance to craft this character without the silliness of his past, because he wasn't, this isn't the guy that was in the pre-Flashpoint universe. This is now really a true loner who is, for lack of a better term, he's a badass. But yet, we get to see some of his soft side with this team. He does not want to let this group fall apart, which for him is very unlike him. He's not a joiner. He's not a family guy. This isn't his type of thing, but he's found value in having these people actually be able to watch his back and recognizes they're all coming from, if that's the one thing they hold in common, they all have that similar flaw. They don't have those people there to watch their back.
And they've never had that family element. They've never had, and I love the fact that he addresses that when it's finally that moment when, because everything you're saying about him stepping up as the leader, I completely agree with. He's recognizing that this team does need to have that, he's never been, loved. He's never really had that, but he can do it for somebody else. And I like just that, because it's that moments of self-sacrifice that out of him, but he's not getting soft. He's not getting weak. He's still tough. He's still, Catman. He's still super cool, but he's saying, you know what? I got to do what's right here. And it's, it's that weird judge of what's right and what's wrong. And it's that's the blend of them that we have a hard time saying they're a villain group, because technically they kind of are, because they have no qualms killing people and they will kill people, for a contract. But there is that code. There is that, that was the thing that always made the previous Secret Six runs so much of a joy for me, that they always had their code. They always stood up for each other, and, they had each other's backs, and we're seeing that team grow. They initially had the one sole mission. They wanted to find out who had captured them. Okay, they figured that part out. Now, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? How do we, and it's the team keeps surviving, and we're actually building a team now. Before, there are a group of people who are thrust together because of the circumstances. Well, now we're starting to see the team. Are they making the right choices always? Probably not, but they're making those choices together, and I like seeing that.
I agree with you. I think that part's really cool. Can we get Goat Bug on the team? As like a mascot or something. I was
calling him Horsefly. Horsefly.
Where are you getting the horse part from, though? It's a goat.
I know it's a goat body, but he looks kind of more like a horse to me. He's got the 4 legs. He's got the fly head, the fly wings. So I kind of take him as a horsefly.
What about Goatfly?
A Goatfly would probably work as well. Yeah. Okay.
Horsefly doesn't work for me because it's not a horse.
Well, I know it's not a horse, but he's got hooves. He's got 4 legs. He's kind of got a horse body. Granted, a goat kind of has a horse body as well, but I don't know. I just, I like the irony of horsefly.
Okay. That'd be like calling it badger squirrel. I mean, there's just 2 animals that are not a part of this. I really love that this character, it's one of the strengths of this book is that you will have strange happenings go on. And with this being a mystical story, that's the great thing about Black Alice being on this team, is that you start to have these mystical threads. This is really a book, due to the nature of all of its characters and their diversity. You can tell almost any kind of story in Secret Six, and it just adds a whole new dimension. This magical, mystical story that's being told here, revolving around Black Alice, is awesome. I did not expect this. You get to see all of these guest stars, both hero and villain, from the mystical world of the DC universe brought together in this book in a way that makes sense, with Black Alice being the centerpiece. And this team who really has just come together, trying to decide, and not really officially, but this team who has kind of come together, trying to decide if they can band together to help save this girl from this dire world-ending threat that's going on around them. And in normal cases, when you look at the villains, are typically written as these selfish characters, right? Who are only out for their own best interests. In this case, why wouldn't you just let her be sacrificed? I like that we're showing a different layer to these characters by the fact that they're stepping up for each other. Big Shot, obviously, knowing who he is, Ralph, Dibney, elongated man, knowing that that's who this character is, it makes sense that he does not want to lose someone again like he did Sue. And I get that. He's stepping up and he's become kind of a father figure in this with her and looking at, I'm going to protect this girl. I'm going to make sure she stays safe. That's the inherent hero that we know is at his core. Seeing the other team's members' reasons for stepping up with this is really, really great. I love that you've got the twisted ventriloquist who, seeing her kind of go, I don't know that I particularly care or want to help out. But then, when Catman's saying his piece, I love that she just starts to go along with it. Like he's an engaging leader. And I think because he comes from their world, what he says matters more to them. And they actually perk up and listen because they know that he understands in his own way where they're coming from. And I absolutely adore that about this book.
Yeah, I like how, again, just, we get this really cool action fight sequence going on where Alice is just unleashing some serious mega power here. And again, you see her just completely two of the strongest, mystics out there, three of them, taking out one shot. Cheetahs jumps in, sucks away her power. Bam. You just see her one by one within seconds just take out 4 very powerful creatures. And I love the moments where she's getting ready to kill them. And it's Ralph who's able to talk her down. And you still see just that, again, that step up of the hero in the villain kind of what are they unit, the step up in the growth. But, and right along with what you're saying about Catman, just seeing him lead the team. He's, dare I say it and avoid a large argument, he's not a reluctant leader anymore. He's stepping up to the role. And right there, it was just like, those are some really cool inspirational moments. You're sitting there just going, hoorah!
I have zero issue with you saying that right now because I'm looking at the picture of them on the miniature golf course with Catman standing in front of the Superman statue as you're saying that. So I'm like, you know what? You're right, Jim. He's not a reluctant leader.
It is funny because, with Etrigan, some of the outfits he wore in this issue are absolutely wonderful. Him in the khakis and the polo with the tied off, with the sweater tied around his tied around over his shoulders playing miniature golf. Just that imagery of him in the shades just had me chuckling. But it's funny, as you have these chuckling moments, you do have some really cool stuff going on. You have some serious moments. And again, the humor doesn't take away from the seriousness, doesn't take away from that's some cool stuff going on. But they complement each other so well.
I agree. That's one of the great parts of this whole thing is the way that the humor doesn't take away from all of that. Like he's explaining the dire nature of their situation as he's playing miniature golf on a DC Universe themed world's finest miniature golf course. And even the throwaways to like the fact that he's been with Wonder Woman before and stuff like that, I just thought was really, really fantastic and funny. I want to go back to Black Alice again real quick for a couple seconds, because what I really loved about her was what we're seeing with her right now isn't necessarily who she is as a person. She's just confused teenager who now all of a sudden has been supercharged. And the sheer amount of power that's coming through her is magnified by the scared situation that she's in. So she has an opportunity because she has this intense power to end everything. The fact that she's able to pull back, to your point, says even more about her. The fact that she'll listen to Big Shot says more about her and the fact that she didn't just snuff them out. I really liked that play. It made me respect her as a character even more because it's in that situation when she's in that superpowered mode, it could be argued that she's not really herself then. 100%. So the fact that she's able to have enough awareness to pull back, I think says a lot about her strength of character.
It reminded me of back in the Buffy days when Willow was really delving into the magic and she went, she crossed the line, when Tara got killed and she just started she had the one guy that she's like, oh, bored now, rips off his flesh off his body and kills him. And she's right at that moment where she's going to destroy the universe. And it's Xander who talks her down. Xander saying, "Hey, I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna die standing next to my best friend." And and he had that really just that moment of those two, and that's what brought her down. And that's what the thing that kept her in check. And it's that same connection that Laurie has with Ralph, and it's that the missing father figure in her life, that friend, that person, that guardian. She's recognizing that. And I love the sequence where she's super evil and angry, and she's got great lettering with how they did the dark bubbles with the white lettering in there, and really just changed around the voice bubbles, and then as she goes back to kind of looking in Laurie mode, where she's telling him this is a one-time offer, there's still the darkness in her voice. There's still that, this is a one-time offer. I like just seeing, though, the more sweeter, normal-looking Laurie, Black Alice, with the darkness in her voice. You can kind of hear she still has that evil sound in her voice.
I agree with you. That's the part where I thought that the dialogue bubbles looked really fantastic in this one. You could definitely tell different tones on who was speaking and what their current power status was. This book has a great deal of balance in the team that's doing everything on it. I love the colors. I love the artwork. I love the lettering. It just is really a balance. I love when books have those creative teams that really stand out as a team, where it's a team unit effort and there's not like a weak link in the team, because the book just has something special, a little bit more pizzazz to it. I like how this quest really has taken them throughout the whole DC universe. Like, now we're dealing with underwater world of Atlantis and Arian and the history. I do like history, the idea that, there's things that happened before the New 52. And, this gives a sense of longevity to this world. Demon Knights, for example, it's great that Etrigan's in this. That was a series about some of the early years of this universe. So having Arian in there and Etrigan being aware of this history and how the magic users in the DC universe are being pulled together, regardless of their code or creed or alliances, they're all coming together because these titans that can be unleashed are something way bigger than all of them. It added a sense of danger and depth to this story because you have all of these people gathered in this facility to talk about this, and they're all coming after the six, which makes them seem like a much smaller group against a much larger threat, especially when you got people like Swamp Thing, who we know are super powered, Zatanna, big time players in there. And the question comes up, people like Constantine, why are they not there? And the new Dr. Fate, why are they not there? And the reason why is, because they've got their own things going on, but still you've got everybody but those two gathered in one place. These are your biggest and best of the magic users, of the best in this universe. And I'm staggered by the scale and scope of this particular storyline. And that's something that 8 issues in, when you give me a story, I wasn't expecting a magic story. Were you?
No. And that's the thing with Secret Six. I never really saw them as a magic-based team or saw them dealing with that. But you look back to the history. We had them go to hell. We've had them do a couple other stuff where they're dealing with the freaky and the supernatural that's quote-unquote out of their element, but it's what they do. It's where the job leads them to, So I like, this right here, and especially how this was introduced. It's kind of like this was a sudden bam hits you, but that's just the way this team has always rolled, where they're going bam, 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 bam. It's that nonstop action Jackie Chan fight sequence movie, going on. And that's, again, that's some of the cool stuff that is the Secret Six, where you got a great action sequences going on right along with some funny dialogue, right along with some gripping dialogue, right along with some beautiful artwork. This book gives you all of that craziness, that is life. And I'm, that's one of those things where you're just like, yeah.
That is one of the things that I really like about Secret Six is those moments. Speaking of the themes of friendship in this one, that's really kind of one of the things that drove this issue for me, was this team was banding together because of their own need for friendship. When it came down to it, and they needed Black Alice watched because they couldn't bring her on this one, they needed to be able to handle themselves. Who do they go to? Thank you for being a friend. They go to our Twisted Golden Girls. And it's so great to see Ragdoll, Jeanette, and Scandal back in this book again. We've talked about it in previous episodes. We were talking about, we're really digging about this book. I like that they're brought in because it really is, again, that wink and a nod to classic fans of it. But it also, this is another group that's very similar to this one. Knowing that they would understand that need, and Catman's relationship with Scandal and knowing what he's speaking to when it comes to Scandal with her, I thought was something that really worked for me. It really struck me in those moments. I love Jeanette's reason for going with the team. Like, I can't stay here because I'm a Banshee, and if I stay here, she's going to absorb my power, and I won't be here, quite frankly. So I'm going to go with you guys, if you don't mind. In the typical Jeanette sachet, she's got a classic Victorian style swagger about her in the way that she kind of carries herself, and very proper, and yet with a little bit of naughty thrown in.
Yes.
And Jeanette is just an amazing character because of that. I really love seeing her brought back in. She was a great original creation pre the New 52, and it's great to see her back in this universe in this book again. It's really just a great cast because of that. I actually like seeing her with new people.
Yeah. Oh, and I agree completely with you. And I love how she's being drawn here, because you think back, a lot of times, excuse me, the classic look on Jeanette is to having the big, puffed up hair and, Victorian type wig style, but just, the way it's dropped down, and it's, her look that they're doing here, you talk about that elegance with just a little touch of naughty to it. And I, especially on a lot of some of the really cool facial expressions that she had going on here, with her, when that moments where she's with Catman and Porcelain, with just everything from the point where even she's saying, "Hey, I'm a Banshee. My power, drains my powers. I'll cease to be." Just that look on her face, I was like, man, that's some cool stuff. And it's again, I love doing the second and third read-throughs on 6 to look at the background stuff, especially. You know what? Part of me really wants to get a miniature tofu piggy in a blanket. I want to find those just to see how awful they really do taste.
I love the bathroom sequence with Big Shot and Etrigan. Speaking of the miniature tofu pigs in a blanket, they apparently go through your system pretty quick and nastily.
Well, art read through. What the funny thing is, that scene you're talking about, I didn't notice that. Because, my first and second read-throughs, I was really going through, and you're focusing on, Jeanette, Catman, and Porcelain standing there. You don't even see, because the one panel, he's knocking on the door. The next panel, Etrigan's coming out. You even see some toxic fumes coming out. Big Shot holding his nose. I was like, oh, wait, that's cool.
I did love the Cleveland reference from Etrigan underwater. Again, seeing the change in his outfit. I like seeing Cleveland references in comics just because of the history with Superman and everything like that. But, obviously in Secret Six, it's always great to see some form of Cleveland reference there. I adore the way that this book handles Catman consistently. We know that he's not good in enclosed places. Also, the whole underwater thing obviously isn't going to fit him very well either. This situation really is, now you're trapped inside this bubble. And if the bubble bursts, you're all dead. So this plays right into his phobias that we see. The way that the team kind of addresses it, even the way that they provide comfort, it's always kind of like, that's kind of comforting. Sure, I guess so.
Try to forget you're at the bottom of the sea with only cult member magic holding back the elements. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that should comfort him easily.
When Aquaman comes through and you start to see the fight between Aquaman and Catman, I loved how that all played out between the two of them. I love that the rest of the team is sitting there watching. Well, it's like this, darling. Catman and Aquaman are fighting. Catman and Aquaman. Oh, I see your point. They're all just sitting there watching. This is such a great sequence of events. Again, humor that doesn't take away from the dire action because of the fact that you kind of want to see how that's going to play out, right?
Yeah. It's funny because you see Strix, writing on, her little pad. And I want to know what she's saying. I want to know what she wrote on that moment. That's the thing I'm kind of like, I want to see what she wrote there.
I know.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like an agreement. I wonder if she's writing the same thing that they all are.
Hubba hubba.
Yeah. The whole place starts collapsing around them, and they ended up accomplishing their task of taking out that one totem or pole or whatever you want to call that thing. But we find out that the people that came, the magicians that came from Atlantis to them, are in fact what we suspected all along. They're not on the up and up either. They seem to be trying to, in their own way, take advantage of this whole process to gain power, which seems to be a thing always, right? With magic, nobody's ever really doing it for good reasons. They're always there for their own.
Well, I read it as they are minions of the dark giants, and they want them to be released to destroy the world. So they are the badder of the bad guys.
Okay.
That's how I'm reading all this, because you go back to that sequence in the hospital where they did the split face, where the one side saying we have to destroy them, the other side's we have to protect them. So right there, that was like, okay, yeah, and then as the team's going on, you really don't know until the end. Okay, yeah, they should have been protecting those columns, not trying to destroy them.
So are you assuming they're trying to release them then?
I think I'm reading. Yeah, they want to release the dark gods. Or whatever.
That's why they want to destroy the White
dark
Gate?
Giants. They
want to destroy the White Gate for that purpose?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't thinking that way until you're saying it. I'm like, oh, I can kind of see that, actually. It's an interesting story because of that. I'm very anxious to see where this is going. What I really like about this is an epic. This is now we're like 2 issues into this storyline. And I like how this book's really written in arcs. And these arcs feel big. And there's big happenings in them, big revelations in them as we're going through. There's a lot of character development and drama. There's an evolution of the team as time goes on. This book does this really well. The first, initial kind of opening leading up to all of this was a really nice, substantial arc. Now we've got the second arc that this series is going into, and it is another meaty one again. Very unique book because of that. I really love, stories that feel big. We talk about event-itis and all that kind of stuff all the time. I love events. I mean, this feels like an event in Secret Six. I mean, I think that's what we strive for in comics, right? We want big happenings. We want to go, hey, dude, did you read that? And I'm glad that this has been a shift. I think in recent years, not only do we have the big events that happen in universes, but books themselves have their own events that are going on. They're big, epic storylines. And this is an epic storyline right now going on in Secret Six, and I'm really digging. And there's a number of my favorite books right now that are having this type of thing going on. They've got their own monthly epic storyline going on that's just drawing me in and making me excited to read those comics. I'm going to get a chance to talk about this book in particular because the second arc is really hitting a home run for me. And I want people reading this if they haven't been checking it out. It's really a great character-driven book with amazing art, great humor, but intense storytelling and action. It's like everything you would want in a book. And if you're enjoying it, please let us know because I'd like to hear more from people about this one.
Our next discussion will be on Clean Room number 2. The writer is Gail Simone with artist and colorist John Davis Hunt with letterers by Todd Klein, cover art Jenny Frison. Associate editor is Rowena Yao. Editor Shelley Bond, and Clean Room was created by Gail Simone.
I love this book. It was great to see. This was one that we were going to go through, and we're still going to continue going through all of the new Vertigo releases, so don't think we've abandoned that or anything like that. Sometimes it's just important when you read a book and you're kind of like, I really want to talk about this. I felt like the first issue was a great setup, and I really enjoyed the first issue. The second issue took it to the next level, which is what you want from a series like this, and really started to answer some questions. It started to build, but also started to build more questions for me. Because I was assuming at first that we were dealing with, a hero versus a villain with Astrid. I thought maybe Astrid's a bad guy, and I wasn't quite sure there. Now she's an interesting gray area that I would say more she's on the side of the angels than she is the bad guys by the end of this issue. It was a very interesting development for the character that, she's reaching out to this girl, Chloe, and we're kind of assuming that she's trying to bring Chloe into the fold as opposed to pushing her away. But because of the questions that Chloe's asking and the fact that Chloe doesn't seem to be as willing to join the flock, that she's pushing her away and trying to get her out of their life. And I like the the balance of, I've got to protect this world that we've crafted and of people who are sensitive like you. She sees something in Chloe, but's not quite sure if Chloe fits the mold or if she can be a part of the crew. And I like that. And it's funny how my shift at the beginning was Chloe against them, and I was more focused in the first issue on Chloe being against them. By my second read through of this issue, I'm more like Astrid's trying to bring Chloe in. And I'm not so sure that I disagree with that. I think Chloe should be a part of them. Like, looks like they're trying to do some good things.
And it's funny because I agree with you on, with your set, where you were, where you're at, but I still am holding on to the fact that I don't know if she's 100% on the side of the Angels. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you have this character, who, could be bad, who could be good, could be in the middle ground, could be that unknown. She reminds me a lot of Constantine, mm-hmm. where, Constantine, I'm comfortable calling Constantine a hero, even though he's a hero who's willing to, let one person die to save millions. So, and to me, that's always kind of like the Constantine vibe I always get. And with Astrid, I kind of get that vibe that, she's willing to let, if she needs to, good people die if it saves, the greater good. It's that whole, the Star Trek, needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And I kind of see Astrid having that philosophy, having that way of going. But on the other hand, as I'm saying that, part of me still is holding on to the fact that she may be the big bad. I'm still not 100% convinced. Like, Constantine, I know, is a good guy. He's just, it's what he is. With her, I'm still not 100% certain of that, because that's what makes her such a great character, that, she's got that darkness in her. She's got that gray factor. She's got that unknown in her. And I'm like, that's the thing that really has me wanting to read issue 3 already. And I just, I jumped on issue 2. I was like, oh, we got to talk about this one. Because, again, it's like, these are some really great just blending of the light and the dark, all together, where you're reading this, you read it multiple times, and you're still like, okay, it's this, no, it's that. And as you're looking at it and on different ways, you can see different things. And I like that.
Do you think her fiance had secrets that she doesn't know about?
Oh, big time.
That's the reason why he did what he did?
Yeah.
Because
it looks like that's the people who go to the clean room have a dark secret, have something they've done wrong. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, killing innocent children or who knows what, they've got some darkness in them. So the fiance had some type of darkness, and that's what consumed him. It was, once she brought it out to light, brought it in their mind, and that's what, consumed, him, and why he did what he did. That's how I'm kind of reading it. So on that side, I see, yes, she's kind of a good person, but, there is still that whole, did he really have it, or did she put something there? Did she make it worse? Maybe his fatal flaw was he cheated on his taxes, and really, yeah, that's illegal and it's against the law, blah, blah, blah. But is that really worth dying over? So I don't know what he did. Yeah, I don't know what his darkness is. And that's part of the thing that I'm holding on to. I don't 100% know if Astrid is on the side of the Angels, if she's, an evil person, where she is, because I don't know that final piece.
I like that part with her. I liked her chess analogy about there being other players on the table that nobody, other pieces on the table that no one ever knew about. And it seems metaphorical of their whole group.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, people didn't know we're here. And yet she's also talking about there's a whole bunch of people in the world that you don't know about that are there. It's a very interesting, deep book, when you start getting into things like that. And I really enjoyed it. That whole bit in the clean room, we finally got to see that sequence played out, I thought was phenomenal, because I thought this guy was a victim at first, because I walked in thinking, oh, Astrid's, she's going to be a bad guy of sorts or things like that. My first read through of this issue, I knew Astrid was the kid who was the victim in the beginning of the first issue, but I felt like, those circumstances change her. They make her a little darker. This sequence reads totally differently the second time through, knowing what he is and what he did than it did the first time through. Because as we saw the reveal of what happened to him and what he actually was, and how he victimized others because of his own perversions, it changes the whole reading of perhaps the first issue and the second issue, because I did go back through and read both of these together. And it reads very differently when you see Astrid in a different light because of the sequence of events. So I agree with you that I don't quite have a finger on her yet, but I am leaning more that she's on the side of the angels. I think your Constantine comparison's pretty spot on as far as she's a good guy, but
right, yeah,
that kind of thing. But I am leaning to the fact that I don't think that she's a bad guy anymore, and I do think she's a character that I'm going to find myself really liking as this series progresses. I already do. After the revelations of this issue, this was a pretty critical issue for me because I loved issue 1. It left enough for me to make me really interested in this whole universe. Issue 2 answered and created more questions for me and has invested me more in this book in a way that I'm really digging.
Now, the clean room, are you thinking holodeck type technology, or was that all Mystic she's pulling it out of his mind, creating, because they were all seeing it. Everyone in that room saw what was going on there, but the people outside the room, could they see it? And that was the thing I was trying to, because you keep going through, the one sequence where they show the control room, they're really just talking about the ambient illumination, 15% overhead beacon up to 25, no, 30%. So they're tweaking with light level. So the actual stuff going on inside that, did you read that as Mystic or technological?
Both. And here's an explanation why. She has to go in there so cleansed of any kind of artifacts attached to her life. She can't be dirty. She can't have any kind of jewelry or things like that could, because, those things have power inside them.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a psychic, some kind of psychic mystical phenomenon that goes on with these characters in there. So that's definitely a factor in this. She was shown this for a reason. And part of that is her sensitivity. I think there was no accident that she was brought in there. What we see with her, with what she witnesses and sees that other people don't, I think is something that Astrid's very familiar with. I think the clean room is a part of that. I do think there's a technological piece to it as well. So I would say yes to that. I think there is that holodeck kind of thing in there as well. But I don't think it's that alone. I think it's a combination of A and B. I think if you don't have the psychic mystical piece, you don't have the B, if that makes sense. So right. I think it is a combo of the two, and that's why I don't think it's as simple as saying it's that.
Okay, yeah, because that was one of the things I was trying to get my head around. Because I was taking it as like what you said, where it's a combination of the two. Where but I took it as the physical imagery they're seeing was more Mystic. Whereas the lighting, if you weren't connected and you weren't touched, with this ability, you would still see the white room. You would still see, you wouldn't see that cemetery. You wouldn't see that knife. You would just see him crawling around on the white floor and all that. But because those two both are touched along with it, they can actually see the images. So, but I agree with you. A combination of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
What if the technology allows it to manifest those so others can see it?
Oh, yeah.
As a way of recording it or, making a record of it or, further studying it. I don't know. I don't know if that's, and I don't even know if it's fair to say that's a visual thing, but, they're obviously doing some form of analysis of what's going on with that technology. And it's very protected with what they're doing. Here's the thing. I don't know that there is a set answer to give right now. I actually think the speculation is where we should be with this. And I think it's probably going to be little elements of all the things that we're saying and some surprises thrown in as well as we learn more about the clean room and what it actually is. Obviously,
what it does.
Yeah, it's not a throwaway because it's the title of the series. Right. So, there's going to be a whole piece to it. But I really like how we learned a lot about this guy, his own phobias, what drove him to be who he is, what he's done that's terrible. And by the end, he seems so suitably creepy that where he goes from here is exactly where you want him to be because of what he's done in the past.
Yeah, you kind of want to see some justice there, and that was the thing with him, because I loved seeing, Chloe not completely, grasp what is going on there. And it's she gets it, but I don't think she completely understands, what is going on and how, because I want to see tomorrow when she reads about this guy, what happens to him. And when she finds out that this guy is now, this guy who killed children, who blinded them, then killed children, is now dead, and when the horrific stuff that happens to him, I wanted to put 2 and 2 together, figure out, okay, something because he was in the clean room came back and attacked him. Something, those are the moments that I'm really looking forward to, especially because the way she left this. She's like, you're a monster. And she's absolutely just furious at Astrid over everything that's happening. It's like, we need to call the cops. That's not my jurisdiction. What do you mean? It's just, he's clean. And I'm like, and I love just that moment of, where Astrid's just so, cold and just very matter of fact. And Chloe is just so filled with rage and passion. And she's like, and she's yelling, and even to the point where after she leaves, she's still swearing at the building and she's still yelling at them. It's like, it's those 2 issues in, I'm already, rooting for Team Chloe, but I know she's got to join Astrid. She's got to join the team. She's not going to take them down. She's going to put 2 and 2 together. She's going to figure out, okay, maybe they're good, maybe they're not. And it's, she's our gateway. She's our eyes into this world. And it's, those are the kind of stuff that when you have that linchpin and you have that latch on person right from issue 1 right into issue 2, it grows. You're like, okay, I'm in for the long haul on this book.
Now, is he being really attacked by the white spider monkeys, or is that in his head?
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, because you think about the beginning of the book where her buddy who, is tied up in a knot, something tied him up.
Right.
Or did he do it to himself? Is this all in his mind and he's doing it to himself? Because you think about just the police forensics found nothing. The room was 100% clean, which is impossible for a junkie. And they acknowledge how this is impossible for this guy to have nothing. There's no fabrics, no nothing. It was completely 100% clean. So that tells me something came in, something mystic goes in, tied the guy up in a knot, and their presence cleared out everything. Their presence cleared out all the grime and the junk and the fungus and the whatnot that, would normally be in the apartment of a junkie. So I'm taking it, these are actual physical, creepy, white monkeys that his mother sent for him, that are spider monkeys, actually, because they do have the, I guess those are spider legs, sort of, coming out of them. So it's, some really creepy stuff going on. But I'm taking it, there's an actual mystical, physical element there doing that to him.
Yeah, well, see, I agree with that, but with the psychological nature of this and what they're seeing, is it a physical manifestation or is it in his head? Or is it a little bit of A, a little bit of B? I don't know. And that's why that has me excited for the next issue, because I want to know. I actually like the place that I'm in at the end of this issue. I like that I'm questioning all of this. I like there's a lot of things in this issue that I'm like, I don't need it answered right now. I want to read to see how it's answered, if that makes sense. Yeah. I like speculating about it. I love the debate that we're having right now. I like that you saw certain things that I didn't, and you're adding more to my sense of what the lore might be. But I still feel like everything we're saying is what the lore might be. We're kind of figuring this out as we're going along. And I like that. We haven't quite figured out the rules of this world yet. That's the great thing about a new crafty world like this. And it's very smart. It's very Vertigo in its presentation. My favorite Vertigo stories are the ones that are smart. They got kind of like this, they make you question rules. You go back to your stories like your Sandmans and your Preachers and stuff like that, that have had a rich history. And why have they had such longevity? Why are these stories that people still go back to? 100 Bullets, things like that. Because they're books that have clearly defined rules that were developed over time, characters that were defined over time, an organizational structure that just makes you kind of interested in seeing where is all this going to go. And this one fits into that mold.
Yeah. And here's the neat thing for me. If I'm wrong, I'm okay with it.
I am too.
I think that's the cool part about this story. There's a lot of times when you get a theory, and if you latch onto that theory, if you're wrong, you feel a little cheated. With this story, if I'm wrong and these are not physical manifestations, but purely mental, and it's his body ripping itself apart or however they're doing, I'd be cool with that. I think that'd be also a really awesome story to tell if that was the case. So, and I think that's part of the strength of this story being told, that anything, if I'm wrong about, something, I'm all right with it because, it's, that's part of just my enjoyment of this and what I'm getting and how I'm getting it. If, there's, funny when you said these are our theories, these are our ideas on what we're reading on this, and it's it's kind of I love just going on this journey of this mystery, this unknown. We've got ideas, but we really don't know where, and I think that makes a story really enjoyment for me. If I can predict what's going to happen, it's still going to be a cool story, but if it does kind of ruin stuff. I love having the swerve. This book is one giant swerve, one after another, and you don't see it coming until it actually hits you. And in the ending of that final page where the monkeys are attacking him, and she's just sitting there sipping her Earl Grey tea. Sleep well, Mr. Finster, sleep well. And just that look on her face again. I want to say she's evil, but I don't know, because a guy who killed children is dying, in a horrific manner. So I'm like, that's kind of justice, isn't it? Or is it? Or is there even more of a price that we don't know yet? Because, it's that whole rule of magic always has a price. Well, I'm assuming this also has a price to it. What's the price that's being paid to get this form of justice?
Speaking of prices, can we talk about Superman Wonder Woman number 22?
Oh, God, yeah.
This one I really want to discuss. It's Peter J. Tomasi on story and words. Doug Mahnke is the penciler. Jaime Mendoza, Sean Parsons, and Johnny Desjardins on inks. Will Quintana, colorist. Rob Lay, letterer. Carrie Nord, cover. Jean-Paul Leon, Monster Month variant cover. Andrew Marino is the assistant editor. Eddie Berganza is the group editor. And apologies for name butchery, because I know it happened there on some level. I really want to talk about this book. It's been one, ever since its launch, it's been one of my favorite DC titles. It's just been consistently, issue by issue, shifting creative teams. It's delivered on being a top quality book. It's, Batman, Superman, Batman, the two different variations of that, particularly the one, the original run of that series has been one of those flagship titles where you kind of look at it and go, wow, it really had an impact. And it showed you that buddy team-up books can have an impact on the universe, a continuing evolution of relationship. In this case, because it's Superman and Wonder Woman and their relationship, Superman's gone through some major life changes. So has Wonder Woman. Those are coming to a head in this issue. Superman, all of his people close to him have been brought in for questioning. Why? Because of their relationship with him. He's in a position where he can't let that stand. He wanted to handle this on his own in his own way. Diana, being the partner that she isn't willing to let that stand. She makes her own decisions on how to handle it. And here we see some clear differences in the operating nature of the two. I don't know that I disagree with either, but I also understand the conflict and why he would look at it as an affront to him, why she would see it as supporting him. It's an interesting sort of dichotomy here. And I really love this issue. I'm anxious to talk to you about it because I think we saw this in the preview with the DCU launch, those preview pages. We saw that this was coming, but to see how we actually got here, I think is so impactful to go, oh, I get it now. I get why he's saying what he is. And I'm not sure that he doesn't mean it.
I 100% think he means it, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. I really dig the Superman-Wonder Woman relationship, but I think it's done. I don't see him. I don't see him getting through this one. And it's, the Superman code. It's who he is and what he lives by. I see them being friends. I see them being teammates, but I think that's the end of the line. I think that's going to be it for them. And unfortunately, maybe fortunately, because who knows where this will lead Clark, next. But I really did like the Superman Wonder Woman relationship. And again, as I'm saying it's over, I hope I'm wrong. I hope maybe they can patch it through. But, because when that preview first came out, I remember I was saying, well, maybe he's just saying that to get her to back off. He ain't just saying that. This isn't just a comment on his part to try to get some space and get him, some some time where he can do his own thing, he truly 100% means it, that it's over. And I like how it's over, and she's like, hey, can we work through this? He's like, not right now. And that kind of gives me hope that maybe something can patch between them, but I don't see it, because just, it's the whole, their mindset and their code and their conduct and just who they are. There is some big glaring differences between them. And I think that is now coming to head, and we're seeing the fruition. Especially, I like the scene where the one comment where he talks to Flash, and Flash is like, hey, do you want me to call for backup? And he's like, no, I've got the God of War. Doesn't refer to her as Wonder Woman, Diana. It's the God of War. And I think that, to me, was a really statement. And it was obviously intended as a little jab at Diana, but that's a very statement on how angry and just upset that he is.
I think, though, also that he doesn't refer to her affectionately. I don't know if that's pure anger. It's more of, it detaches him from her. When you start putting somebody's real name like Diana to it, there is more of an emotional attachment. God of War is more of a title. It's like calling someone a teacher instead of their name. You know what I mean? Or
right.
Calling you a fraud investigator instead of your name. Those are things that they're titles. They don't give you an identity. When we start talking about you as a person, you start getting into specifics of what makes you different than somebody else who has similar label. In Superman's case, I don't know that they're done. And I don't know that they can't find their way back. But here's an interesting part, and this is where art imitates life. In reality, if you take a look at Superman's world right now, on a personal, professional, and every other possible level, his world has been completely shaken to its foundation. He's not even the same guy he was before. He doesn't know his place in the world. He doesn't know who he is, where he's going. He doesn't know what his personal life should be like. He doesn't know what his professional life should be like. And how does being a superhero fit into all that? Those are all parts of what make him up, and he doesn't know who he is on that level. So how can you even decide how somebody in a relationship fits into your world when you don't know how you fit into the world? You know what I mean? I mean, it becomes a very interesting problem. He's fighting to find some semblance of himself in his world right now, and can't quite put a finger on it. We see it. We see him. We see the glimpses and echoes of him in the sense, the way that he steps up in dire situations and is Superman. But it's still the fact, dude's depowered. His identity's been leaked and revealed. There's danger to everyone who knows him. By Diana doing what she did, in his mind, it's like, this is another person taking away a piece of me. And choosing things for me, doing things for me, changing my world. I don't want to say for me, but changing my world and doing it to me, in those cases. So she really made this decision at a poor time without including him in the decision-making factor, because of the fact that he would naturally be more sensitive to this than he would other times. I don't know that I find her at fault. I don't. She kind of knows who she is. She knows what she's going through in her world, and she's a little bit more stable. He's not stable enough to be stable with her, if that makes sense. He will eventually get there, but he's got to follow his own path and his own journey to get there. And whether or not the two of them, whatever his new status quo is, whatever that officially looks like when it's all settled, the interesting part will be, can their status quos, is this a zigzag? Or is this a true breaking apart? And I think that's the interesting part of the story right now. And his feelings probably are very genuine, because he doesn't know who he is. How can he know how he feels about her? Right. It's an interesting part.
And I agree with you that there could be a patch up. There could be a fix between them. And I think that seeing how that journey comes about will be the most interesting part about this, because, is this the end, or is this just a hiccup? And that's the unknown. Right now, the way I look at it, I say it's the end. But again, if I'm wrong, that's cool. Especially if they explain it and they show it in the story and they show the build up to why he's able to work through this, why he's able to put the pieces together. And I think that's going to be an interesting story, because the as far as I know, the Superman Wonder Woman title isn't going anywhere. So that, again, should be a kind of an interesting path that this title can go on, even if they don't rectify showing them go to a place of trust and friendship, if they're not, beyond that. That's, I think, so this story has some really cool, has two super powered creatures, characters in it, but also they've got this great epic story being told about their interaction. And, when you first thought that the fact that they got together was the epic part of the story, no, that's just the beginning of everything. Along the road, you've got these changes, you've got these hiccups, you've got swerves, bends, and dips and whatnot. You've got to, show that. And that's part of, the fact that it's kind of a neat, story of a relationship that we're seeing. Plus, I love the fact that they keep always bringing in the supporting cast, with John Henry, with Lana and Lois bringing in. They were some great parts of the story as well, even though this particular issue, they weren't around throughout the whole thing, but those couple really cool moments, especially watching, Lana just, give Lois, a jaw jacker, just bam, give her a quick pop. I really like seeing her throw down, especially because of who these two people are and who they both, represent in Clark's life. I thought that was a kind of a neat moment, going on,
I think so too. I got to say, I really dig Wonder Woman's new costume. It's really grown on me more. I liked it at the beginning. I thought it was a cool idea, but seeing it in practice with different artists really makes me excited about this costume. I think it's working really well. I loved the Lana Lois punch and how, one of the great things about this story is you can see so many people's reactions and point of views and understand them. Even if you don't 100% agree with them all, like I understand where Lois was coming from, why Lois did what she did. I understand Lana's reaction, why Lana did what she did. Diana, her choices that she made, I can understand them. I can even, like if I was sitting with Clark, I could even justify them to a certain extent, but I also understand his hurt. Because Clark's like trying to find his way in the world. He's also trying not to be the one that like everyone looks at, we got to take care of him now because he's got less powers. He needs to be his own man and needs to know who he is in the world and needs to find some strength in that. And by her doing what she did, it diminishes that. And in many ways shows her lack of understanding of what he really needs right now. And I think there's that piece of it. And that doesn't mean that she's at fault from that. It's more of they're at a crossroads. And I think the dust can settle on that, and either they can choose to try and find a way back to each other, or maybe the dust just needs to settle. They need to go their own separate ways and see if they naturally find their way back and build something new and stronger. Because sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you just have to walk away and kind of find out who you are. The cool part is everything you're saying. To me, it's far more interesting that this title has all of that play up in the air right now. I don't care which way any of that goes. I'm engaged in this story because it feels so real. And the events have really led to this in a very strong way that I'm going to be very interested to see the way that this all plays out. Not just in this book, but elsewhere. But I love that this title now feels like this is a pivotal turning point for these two characters that should impact their solo titles, should impact Justice League down the road. No matter what happens, whether they get back together right away, down the road, or never, this event right now is a very pivotal event in the DC universe, and it's a landmark event. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And it's funny because just the sequences in the Watchtower, sequences in the satellite, I liked how when Clark first arrived, it recognizes the transponder, but not the power signature. And it's just about to fire the guns on him when he speaks, and it does the voice print. Oh, okay, this is, Superman. Welcome, Superman. But I like that even the satellite doesn't recognize him. And that for me was something that really added to the fact that, what Clark's going through. And especially when Wonder Woman arrives, you really see the bloody handprint, the bloody footprints. You really see that he is bloodied and beaten, and just you kind of understand the desperation, but as just, again, really cool moments where she's like just get me to transport bay. Let's go. She's jumping into a plane without even second hesitation to go get him because she figured out what he's doing, where he's trying to get supercharged by the sun. I love the fact that she isn't giving up on him. She is going there and she's putting herself in danger, trusting only that the Flash will be able to teleport them out of there at the nick of time. It's one of those, kind of cool hero moments where you see, we always talk about just those dun-dun moments of Superman. Well, Wonder Woman, she's got some dun-dun moments too. And I do like her intensity. And that's something I like about her and Clark, because she is so intense and she's got that Amazonian power, that she emanates. And Clark, to me, always, yes, he's got the Superman godlike powers, but he was always that Kansas farm boy. And he always he always seemed like he had that calming presence to him, where she seems to have more of a, wow factor. But it's, I like seeing those two, and I want to see them together. But on the other hand, I'm digging the stories they're getting here with their breakup, man. This has been one of those roller coaster rides for me, because I really dig the story. I wanted to see it go, but just that moment in time, right up that high action chase sequence where they transport out the nick of time, and Clark's just looking at her. I don't know if I love you anymore. I love just that moment, just that look on both their faces, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this sequence is everything you're saying. I'm going to question something you said earlier, and I want to talk about this with you because you brought up an interesting point. They're at this sequence where the two of them are going to go out together into battle. And, she's like, you do know I'm coming with you. He was ready to say no to her, and I think that was due to every bit of the bitterness that you were talking about and all that. It's kind of like, no, we've been through this. We're kind of at a crossroads right now in our relationship. I don't want you coming with me, and I get that. I think her speech, though, where she talks about they were teammates first and foremost and what she brings to the table and what that relationship means as teammates to her. I don't think his saying, I've got the God of War by my side, I don't think that was a snarky thing. I do think it's a sign that their relationship has shifted, but I don't think it was meant as a negative dig. I thought it was his kind of affirmation that, no, you're right, we're teammates, and let's do this as teammates. And, because he's still Superman. And she was giving him a very rational argument as far as why she should be there. And it's hard to argue with that. They have philosophical difference, but he has philosophical differences with almost everybody on the team. Right. You argue, because he's Superman and the nature of who he is and how he operates. Well, although you could argue he and Barry probably get along very well with their philosophical choices, but certainly one of his best friends is Batman. And it could be argued that the two of them are, opposed on many different occasions in their beliefs. So I really liked that in that sequence. I agree with you that there was, because of the relationship turmoil, that's why he was saying, don't come along. I don't need my girlfriend there. She's saying, I'm not your girlfriend. I'm your teammate. First and foremost, we will always be, as a part of this league, teammates, first and foremost. And you can't take that away. And that really is an interesting code. And I don't know that he disagrees with that. I thought in that moment that was more affirmation that, you know what, you're right here.
Yeah, I can see that. But part of me does, I don't know. And I don't want to think, Clark is being snarky, because that's a personality trait I would never want to see Clark actually doing. So maybe it is just a statement, hey, I've got the God of War. I don't need anybody else. But part of me just, I don't know. Part of me still reads it as, it was kind of a dig on Diana. Not, no, don't worry, Diana and I have this covered. Because if Superman were to say, hey, we've got this covered, that would have just, that would be a kind of more of a, if he were to say Diana and I have this covered, to me, that's a more of a, we're doing this. Now he's saying it's him and I've got, the God of War by my side. So I still, part of me, I don't know if it's, I don't think snark is the correct term, but there's maybe it's not the intimacy. It's not the closeness there. Maybe he is just saying, hey, I've got he could have very easily said, I've got Wonder Woman by my side, and it would still have the same power. The fact that he's not calling her Diana is the main thing there, and the main thing that, shows the difference in them and in their relationship.
Yeah. I just don't, I don't think it's as negative as you're originally saying. It doesn't appear that way. But I agree with you 100% that it is a sign of the relationship shift and their way of operating right now. It's very businesslike. Like their relationship has now become very businesslike at the moment. Whether or not it will stay there is the real question. So, I mean, there is a shift. And there's one thing we can agree on. And even if we just agree to disagree at the end of this, you're like, I see it as more snarky and that. Cool. No problem with that. It's one thing we're adamantly agreeing on. There's a shift in this relationship that's really apparent here. But we do get back into the business side of Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship and the action sequence at the end. And that is just plain awesome. This book really kicks it up a notch when it needs to. And you know what I love? Superman, the average person who starts to get as depowered as Superman would step aside and go, you know what? I'm not as powerful as I was before. I need to stay more street level. Because who knows if this is going to be a continuing condition? Who knows if it's going to get worse? Who knows if my powers could just shut off at any point in time when I'm doing this? There's a danger to me here. He doesn't know anything else other than the fact that, you know what? I've got these powers right now. And as long as I've got them on any level, I'm going to use them the way that I always have and do what I believe is right and still try to live by my code and still be Superman in spite of all this. That is a part of him coming out on the other side. And I mean, he's not there. It's a journey, but that is part of finding his path. He's trying to determine how to play in his own new. It's funny. Back to kind of what I was talking about in Clean Room. We're learning the rules of that world. Superman's developing the rules of his world now and what that looks like. And he hasn't quite gotten there yet because he's not 100% comfortable, but there's certain things that he's latching onto and holding onto very strongly, whether he's right to do so or not, we'll find out later, in order to establish himself. Like there's been times where he's done stupid things. Like we've seen it in Batman Superman, where he has chosen not to call for backup, not to call for the team because of the fact that he needs to be Superman. And he's regretted it at certain points in time where he's like, I probably should have done this here. It's funny how what I really like about the writing of this character right now is other titles that he's in are very much companions to the events that are going on here, and they echo them. So you can look at that and go, wow, now we got this moment here where he's diving at a helicopter, and should he be really doing that? Well, he can because Diana's there to support him, but yet there's still every bit of the strength that you normally expect to see as Superman in that. And I think he would do this without her being there because that's just who he is at his core. It's an interesting development of the character. I really love this character study of this guy. He feels more human now than he ever has. And I love that.
Yeah. I love superpowered, Superman, but this version of him, this depowered version of him is actually kind of cool. And I liked when he goes into the helicopter, the first thing, and those guys are they got their pistols and they're firing. And he goes, you do realize that hurts, right? And he just grabs the guns, does a quick, grabs the barrels, bends them up so they can't fire. And he just calmly walks out of there, maintains speed and altitude. And then even Diana has that same type of mindset. They're trying to unload on her, and she's like, please stop firing your weapons in such close quarters. Someone could get hurt. And again, it was just that kind of moments that, it had me kind of chuckling to see how each of them still are dealing with those same type of problems. They're getting hit with the bullets. Diana's a lot better off than Clark is in this situation because of her powers are still at the same level. But I do like the fact that they're trying not to kill people, or they're definitely 100% not killing people. And to be honest, the most dangerous thing to those people are themselves right now, where they're firing wildly and they're doing the shooting like that.
I can't wait to see what they're going to do with Parasite.
Yes.
It's an interesting choice, especially with what's going on with Superman and his powers right now, to have Parasite there. This story has been gripping. And I'm with you. I love superpowered Superman, and I want to see him eventually be that guy again. Same way I want to see Bruce Wayne be Batman again, right? But I'm patient for a journey. I love journeys. I love stories that feel big. I love stories that pace themselves in a way where you get to know a character in a unique and interesting way. And that's happening right now in these comics with these characters. They're going through life changes. And because of that, it affects the relationships around them. I think we've all been there at many times in our lives. Sometimes you come out the other side better. Other times, not so much so. Other times, somewhere in the middle. and the reality of that playing out in these books is really interesting. It is kind of the whole art imitates life kind of thing. And it is what you learn from good stories in any medium. It's the way you connect with them. And this is really just a great example of a great book. I love the artwork in this too. It really is.
Oh, God, yeah. And I'm glad to see here's something that, with Clark had those gauntlets on his hands. And obviously those are done so he can grab Parasite and hold on to him, etc. The one thing that it was funny because it was in my art read through, I noticed Diana has the same gloves on. I clearly noticed them in Clark from the very beginning, when they're boarding the helicopter, but it wasn't until my second read-throughs you can clearly see Diana always had those gloves on, especially the scene when she's ripping open the door to get the Parasite. You really can clearly see them, but if you go through all of the sequences with her, she's got them on. And I thought that was a cool art fact that the art team made sure, we've got to have these gauntlets on each of them. We've got to have it on right from the very beginning of, the helicopter sequences, so I like the consistency and I was very happy with that. You're mentioning of the artwork, just, triggered that, that thought in my head. Cause this was something that, again, second and third read-throughs, you go through and you look for those little details. You look for those little stuff. And this is another one of those books that has some really cool, has had some really cool visual moments.
This is exactly what I expect from a book with Peter Tomasi.
Yeah.
It really is. Let's talk Slash and Burn. You want to do that from Vertigo?
Oh, definitely. Our next discussion will be on Slash and Burn #1. The writer is Cy Spencer with pencils by Max Dunbar, inks by Andy Parks, Nick Filardi, colorist, with Travis Lanham on letters, Tula Latoya on cover, Tom Mueller logo design, Molly Manhan as the assistant editor, Jamie Rich as editor, Shelley Bond executive editor, and Slash and Burn is created by Spencer Dunbar and Parks.
I loved this book, and this is one you actually said, hey, can we talk about Slash and Burn from the Vertigo books? I'm assuming this is one, like, after the first issue, you're like, I really want to continue reading this
big
one
time.
Right now. This was, Cy Spencer has a rich history as being a writer in the Vertigo universe, and is one of those writers' names that, boy, I keep forgetting the name, and I feel terrible about that because of the fact that so many books that Cy Spencer's been involved with, I've really just dug and enjoyed it. So when I saw this and I'm like, oh, it's a Cy Spencer book. Cool. I'm going to be really into this. And absolutely 110% that's what it was. I love how it starts off in the beginning where we've got Roisin, who, she's like sitting there saying, I'm a murderer. And I'm like, but you're a fire, you're on the side of the angels, you're helping rescue people from this type of thing. And I love that this is a story that builds over the time where she builds up as a hero. She's rescuing her friend. She's doing all the right things, but she also knows an awful lot about fire. I mean, a lot about fire. And this is an example of where it took the second read through for me to read the first issue very differently than I read it the first time through. And I love that. I love that she's got this issue that she's we got to go to it. She's a pyromaniac. And I mean, it isn't until the end that you really discover that that's her thing and that's what's going on with her and what she's talking about in the beginning. But it puts a completely different spin on the beginning part of the story where she really is playing the role of the hero. And I do find that I'm fascinated by her. Like, I want more with her. I want to know more about her story. I want to know more about what she's done in the past because of it. I want to know more about why she views herself as a murderer and what that looks like and what her life's been like, but also how she continues to move forward. And it clearly isn't it's clearly not that simplistic with her. I don't know what you call her. She's not a bad guy. She's not a good guy. She's really a gray area. Because I don't know that I consider her a bad guy. She's done bad things, though. Do you have a label for her?
No, I don't.
Complicated.
Again, that's part of the reason I really wanted to talk about this book was because of, and this is something that I'm really digging about this Vertigo relaunch where I'm getting these books going, okay, who is this? And it's, when I have those moments where I'm like, I have no idea, and I don't want to say I have no idea who she is because they're doing a great job telling us who she is and they're laying this out, but she doesn't fit in the one role. And when you've got a character that's not just A, B, or C, she's Z, you're like, okay, something is definitely interesting here, and that's the thing that keeps pulling me in. That really pulled me in and immediately caught me from the ground floor on Slash and Burn. Especially, you got a firefighter who's a pyromaniac, which, again, that's kind of a neat thing that, you think about just because of, the firefighters are, as far as I know, there hasn't been a lot of, stories where the firefighter is the main character, where the main character, you got a lot of cop stories, you got a lot of, crime scene investigators and CSI and all those type of things, but you really don't have a firefighter. There's a couple, big movies out there that had some firefighters, but this is something for me, and I think that for me was one of the really cool draw-ins. Add to it, we've got a female character as the lead, so you really are throwing things, just kind of not in my traditional wheel well that I would go to, and on top of it, you've got this, kind of mystery of who she is, what she's about, what has she done, what hasn't she done, how much, because how much of it is her personal guilt that she's laying on herself, how much of it is she's actually guilty of something. And I think that for me is a really cool exploration of the human spirit.
One of the things I was hoping for with this Vertigo relaunch was exactly what's happening. Vertigo has always been this label that's this line that's really been an imprint. I'm giving it like 10 gazillion names, but really, imprint is what I was looking for. That has bared a standard for creativity. You get really unique stories in Vertigo. Some of them have been like home run hits where they're legendary names. Other ones are smaller, lesser known ones that were just as creative and just as interesting that just didn't, grab an audience, but I enjoyed reading them, if that makes sense. I really love the renewed creativity that comes out of Vertigo, and I'm hoping that this relaunch, it never went anywhere, but it's definitely a renewed push. I'm hoping it does well for them because of books like this. I mean, this is really unique and interesting storytelling. It's very character driven. It's not something you're going to get in the main DC universe, nor would it be appropriate there. But for me, I love it because it's something different. It's another channel to turn to in my comic book reading library that I really dig. In a day and age where a lot of your HBO and Showtime dramas are, going through the roof. These are the kind of comics, if you're digging that kind of storytelling, you should be recommending to friends who are into that as well. Because these books read very much like those dramas that are going on in both of those. I'm thinking of things like True Detective and stuff like that, where there's a lot of gray areas and those type of things with those type of characters. And it's not clean. And you don't know whether to call them heroes, villains. Every label seems to be not appropriate to those type of characters because they're human. They're written as human. These books are doing that, and they're telling different kinds of stories that really go through any kind of genre. I'm so glad you wanted to talk about this one and you suggested this one because it's such an interesting story because the main character is one that I want to follow her. I'm not sure if I want to follow her because I like her or because I want to see the train wreck. Or everything in the middle. And that's kind of the fun part of this.
Yeah, and I tell you, part of me really, it's one of those things where a lot of times you think about alcoholism or drug addictions, yes. And you see, how people talk about it, it's an illness, a disease, it's a sickness. They can't help themselves, And I love the fact that they're doing that with the pyromania with her, because I really don't think of her as a bad guy. I actually think she is more of a victim to her disease. And I don't like to really kind of clear people of stuff, but there is something with her, because especially you go to the one sequence where the detective Morrow, Bill, the new kid in town, he's sitting there and he goes to light up his cigarette and he lights the fire on the lighter, and they show that panel. The look on her face, and you can see the fire in her eyes, and you see that kind of, she's got that junkie look. She's got that look of that's the addiction, and that's right there. That's her drug. And I love just those really quick panels right there, because I'll admit on my first read through, I saw the look, but I didn't really see the look. You see, because they do a great job with showing a really cool face, but it kind of didn't click on my head that she's the pyro, that this is what's going on with her. And I thought that was a really cool way to do it. And it was a great, clues throughout this whole thing, what her issue is, what her groove is, where she is with this, especially, as the story just slowly progresses to right at the end where she admits it right at the end, last page, right at the end of the book. I thought that was a really cool build up to a story and a really cool moment and set up for issue 2, because it's got me wanting to read issue 2. It's got me wanting to read more about her.
That sequence where, she's sitting there and almost like an orchestra conductor talking about fire and the kerosene and all that. I was originally in the first read through, I was taking that as, wow, she's really into her job and she studied to be this, really great firefighter. And this is where this is coming from. I wasn't taking it as she was a pyromaniac. I took it more as, wow, she really has this kind of intellect about this. She's more of a professor of fire than a negative. It reads so different the second time through for me. I don't know, maybe other people caught it first. Did you catch, like, when she was doing that, were you thinking to yourself that that's like an uncomfortable attachment to it? Or were you thinking more that, like, there's something more?
I wasn't thinking pyromaniac. Okay. I was thinking like along the lines with you, where she is just that really good of a metal. She's the fire examiner. I don't know what the technical term is. You see a lot of times in cop stories where they'll sit there and they can really break down where bullet came in and this and that, and you see them lay out the crime scene investigators. You see that, and I was seeing that with her, that was her deal. That she was one of those type of, a crime scene investigator, but on the fire side, on, the burn side, and that's how I saw it. I didn't see it more of, as I said, I saw that look on her face, but it didn't click on my head until the end that it's what her deal is and what's going on with her. And I agree with you. I like the sequence, especially because they changed how she looks throughout that. They show, with the fire, the conduction of the symphony notes are actually made out of fire. And even her wand is a fire. So I thought that was a really cool kind of moment. Yeah.
Now, the interesting part with her is, what fires has she caused? Did she cause the initial fire that started in the beginning of this? How often does she do that? Because she refers to when she's at the bedside of her friend, she talks about, normally I feel fine after a killing. And I'm like sitting here, wait a minute. Now I'm starting to think a little differently. Did she do that?
See, I don't think she did. I don't think she did that first one. I think when she's talking about a killing, okay, I think she's talking about after someone dies. And I think she's like, I think she enjoys the fire so much that that's part of the why I'm not putting her as a complete evil villain. She enjoys the fire. She enjoys the experience so much that she kind of feels guilty about it. She feels guilty about the pleasure that she gets from it. And that's where, because with the initial thing, with the pot hidden in the walrus, that kind of explains, why this, what kind of happened here, where this was maybe a drug deal gone horribly wrong, where the guy, whoever, caused, they were looking for that weed, couldn't find the weed, so they torched the guy. And I think that's how what's going to eventually kind of get played out in that story there. Sure. But I don't think of her as actually killing the guy or being a killer. It's just the fact that she's been there through so much. She's personalizing it, and fire is so close and intimate to her. She's like, it's part of me doing this killing, I think.
Okay. And I'd be fine with it either way. I find it interesting and fascinating because she refers to herself as a killer in present tense, not past tense. So I'm curious as to what's driving that thought process by her. I love it either way. It's interesting. I love the detective because here's the problem. You play a very dangerous game when you start associating yourself with a police officer, especially somebody in the detective class. And you are somebody who's got something like this going on. I mean, even when he opens up his lighter, the look on her eyes, she's giving away a lot without realizing she's doing it. There is that thing about how certain people want to get caught. That's the way to stop themselves. And you can't help but wonder if this isn't part of the flirtation that goes on with him where that is. I don't know. It's a fascinating story because of that, because I loved watching the relationship between the two, how she kind of goes into the zone while she's talking to him, but then realizes that she needs to back away from him as well and puts a little distance between the two of them. I really loved how that all played out.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because you look back on when she's sitting by her friend's bedside where she's drawing that kind of, she's doing the quote unquote doing the crossword puzzle, but in reality, she's drawing that little fire figure. And then in the orphanage, that's the fire figure she sees in the flames. And throughout periodically, she keeps seeing that imagery, and we keep having that flash over and over. And I think that's part of the pyromania in her. It's always been there. And I wonder if, how much was involved with her parents' death, how much was she involved with other things. And that's part of the thing. Part of me thinks that maybe she's killed people, but by accidents. It's not been an intentional thing. It's it's kind of like it's the illness, it's the disease of the pyromania. She doesn't have control over it, but again, it's also, I think part of it is her personalizing it, saying she is responsible for this, even though she may have not have had a direct hand in it.
Oof. See, I don't know. I think she set the fire.
Well, I think in the orphanage she set the fire.
Right.
I think that one she did.
Well, it's not the only ones. It's not the only one she set, because Pinker's death, like Pinker was one of the kids. Pinker's supposed to be dead, but then she sees Pinker out on the streets later, and I'm convinced she killed Pinker. Here's the thing. Was it intentional? Probably not. It probably was her pyromania. But even so, there comes a point where do you become responsible for your actions? I can't wait to see that story play out. Like, there's a lot going on in this first issue. And it definitely was when I read this first issue 3 times. Mainly to wrap my head around every angle of the story, because it reads one way the first time through, very different the second time through. Then the third time through, you really kind of need to digest both of the first 2 reads as you're going through it again to kind of get a handle on this. And I love that about the depth of this book. It reads very different depending on how well you know certain characters and where they're coming from. I do feel like this is going to be a meaty story where, like, when the second issue comes out, I'm probably going to go back to the first again because of new information.
Definitely. Definitely going to be a multiple read-throughs going back to the first issue. And it's funny because when we see the adult version of Pinker, he's obviously some homeless guy, but I love those moments where she's looking at that. She's recognizing the magnesium in the light bulbs, all the things, how she knows there's going to be that big boom. And she immediately goes into the reaction, immediately, jumps online. And that's part of the reason where I'm like, I don't think of her as a killer, because she is doing, this type of work. But there is something definitely, freaky about her, because she's like, hey, you got a fire extinguisher, and opens a trunk and there's like half a dozen sitting right in there, just ready to be used. So part of me wonder if she does do that whole where she sets the fire and she watches the fire and then she puts it out. I think that's part of her sickness and her disease, because we see at the end where she makes that little kind of doll type thing and sets it on fire and enjoys the burning process. So there's definitely something with her that way.
But take a look at that. That's the same image that you saw earlier when she was a kid.
Exactly.
So she set those dolls on fire. That's kind of her signature.
And I wonder if that's what, and then again, is there a mystical side to this? Because that's the other part of this. There could very easily be, because they talk about even when the adult version of Pinker, he's doing that little nursery rhyme, and she's doing the little nursery rhyme as adult, and they did the nursery rhyme as kids. Maybe there is a big boogeyman out there. Maybe there is a fire boogeyman out there that, so maybe there's a mystic element to this that we really haven't seen yet, or maybe it's just craziness. Maybe it's the whatnot behind this story. There's so many different things that this thing could go to. And I'm actually very excited for these mysteries playing out. How much of her is guilt? How much of her is her just taking the guilt upon herself? And it's kind of interesting because you go back to those final couple sequences setting up. She's got the box full of the table napkins, pure linen. So she's got the perfect the box set there. She's got that lighter right next to it. That's the same lighter she had as a kid. So it's everything going on. She's got her rituals that she does. And part of me wonders if this burning is enough of a ritual for her, or does she take it beyond? Because she says she's in, part of the conversations where she's talking about, to herself, I'm in control. I'm in control. I'm not just going to look, I can prove I can because I'm in control. I don't even know, if I remember how to do that. And you see her going through the motions of, the ritual that she did. How much of it, how much of it is her being in control? Is her losing control? Is this the thing that keeps it going? Those are the things that get me going with this book, because like the more you read it a second, third time, you keep asking yourself more questions.
So the Vertigo launch so far with, we've read many titles now, and we're going to keep going back. A lot of these books we're probably going to have to hit the second issue as they're coming through, just because of the nature of our schedules. But the Vertigo launch, successful for you?
Oh, big time. Big time, because there's multiple titles that I'm definitely going to keep going through. I'm going to definitely keep picking up. I successfully got away from Vertigo. I successfully dropped the Vertigo line, saying I'm not going to do it. I'm back in. It's just when they think I'm out, they pull me back in. And books like this one, Clean Room, The Twilight Children, there's some books that just has me going, oh, I got to read that. I got to jump all over that. So I'm not going to say I'm 100% going to keep continuing on with all the titles, but there are a couple of titles that I'm 100% full on in. I'm in all the way. Let's rock and roll with this,
I do find for me, see, here's the issue. What ends up happening with Vertigo a lot of times, I wind up stockpiling. And usually what ends up happening because of that is when I jump into Vertigo, usually I'm jumping in late on titles. I've got a couple trades that I've got to read. So the books get stockpiled quickly. Well, eventually what ends up happening is the stockpile gets bigger and I just never get to it. And it's not because of quality. It's just because my time doesn't let me. When it's new titles like this and I have the opportunity to just jump in on the ground floor and I like them, I find that I stick with them and I keep up with them because I'm able to. It's just we talk about the economy of comics, right? Where it's, financial economy to it. Well, that's not usually my problem. My problem isn't the money component to it. And I don't mean that like in the sense I've got limitless money. It's more of we both have certain budgets that we can devote to comics, and we have a certain amount of budgeted time that we can devote to comics. It's just reality. My income and that I can put towards comics is larger than my time. And I mean, it's kind of the reality of it right now. There's so much that I want to read. I can't get everything that I want. I'm not financially able to do that. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is I am buying more books right now than I have time to read, which means I'm in a really good position. I'm reading a lot of quality titles. I'm loving everything that I'm reading. The stuff that I'm not getting to, it's more of it's not because of quality, it's because of time. And I love having that problem. It's a weird thing to say, but I love having the problem that there's just too much good material to fit into my time. So I'm always reading something good. This Vertigo line is a great example of that, though. It's adding things to my reading lineup that I will jump to before other titles because of the fact that it's something different and it's really good. And it's adding a diversity to my lineup in terms of types of story, types of characters, types of thought process and themes. That part's really winning for me on this one. This is a title that unless something changes, I'm going to keep reading this one because I really am invested in the character. I'm invested in the world, and I want to know what's going on with her. I agree with you. There's a possibility of some supernatural thing going on here, but if not, if it's all grounded in reality like this, the psychological themes and really pure human drama in this one is totally enough to keep me going.
Yeah. And let me clarify something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, my personal opinion is there's not supernatural on this.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think this is all about, exploration of her addiction and just her disease and everything that's going on with the, mentally stuff. Same thing with her buddy, Pinker, because even as kids, he had issues with fire. So we've got two people who've got issues with fire. Plus, I also like the fact that we've seen some of those other kids, but there's still a couple unaccounted for. They were introduced at the orphanage for a reason. I think later on we're going to see some of those other characters come into play, or maybe they were some of the victims. Maybe they're not around. Maybe there's a reason we're not seeing them. So I really do think this is a psychological exploration, and everything is grounded in reality, not supernatural. But again, if I'm wrong, I'm okay with that because I'm getting some really cool stuff out of it.
Agreed. Can we talk Batman 46?
Oh, yeah.
So Batman 46, the writer is Scott Snyder. The pencils are by Greg Capullo. Danny Mickey on inks, FCO Placencia on colors, Steve Wands on letters, Capullo, Mickey, Placencia on the cover, Tony Daniel with Tomeo Mori and Spike Brandt, the Looney Tunes variant cover, Rebecca Taylor, associate editor, Mark Doyle is the editor, Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And that's a nice new addition. I'm glad to see. That was actually brought up on was it a phone call? I think a little while ago, where they were asking about Bill Finger being noted. And I'm glad that DC made that choice to acknowledge Bill Finger's basically help in the foundation of this character. So this is Super Heavy Part 6, and I was really excited to talk about this issue. I am so into Bat Gordon and the whole world that's being crafted here. And I think mainly because of the fact that we've got Bruce in this. We've got a great storyline going on with him. I'm following all the characters that I love. Like, they've kept all the players on the table. Their roles have shifted because of what's happened to their world. So it's intriguing to me. I'm getting to read I'm getting everything that I normally love. It's just a different sort of shift on it. Bat Gordon is absolutely fantastic because I love Jim Gordon as a character anyway. Seeing him try to take on this role in and out of the mechanical suit is to me a joy. I love the relationship with Bruce and Madison. Duke, I want to see Duke become Batman's Robin. I want to see that come to fruition in this. Like, it's leading to that, right? Don't you feel like that's where this is going?
It's got it. The writing's on the wall, but I definitely want to see that. I want to see this Gordon have a Robin. And the question is, will this Batman have a tech Robin, a non-mech Robin? What's going to happen there? Because that would be a neat way for them to go with this. Where we've got mech Batman. Let's have a mech Robin. Let's continue the line going through. But in a way, Gordon does have his Robin. He's got his rookie. He's got his partner, that he can depend on completely, right?
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, it's true. But, Robin has been known to twist and turn from time to time, too, due to certain situations, to your point. Bloom as a villain. Man, have they done a great job with creating another villain with this character. I really love, in recent years, we've seen characters like Hush and James Jr. come to the forefront as real interesting foils. I love that Bloom is now another character being added to that list of being really deadly, creepy villains that fit the whole Gotham thing. And I can't wait to see where this character goes, not just from this story, but afterwards. They've now added another piece to the mythos. The Court of Owls is another great example of that being a cool thing that's been added. Scott Snyder has been doing a real bang-up job of adding things to the Batman mythos while really making a great use of the tools that we all know and love. And Bloom, to me, is just an amazingly cool character.
Again, with you, I agree with you. I love Gordon as Batman, but I so want to see Bruce Batman go up against Bloom.
Oh, yeah.
That is a fight that I am looking forward to. When everything is said and done, I don't want to see Bloom dead. Because I want to see round 2. I want to see the next fight. I want to see Bruce versus him. I want to see how Bloom deals with the fact that it's not Jim Gordon anymore, as Batman. There's so much stuff, but it's funny because as we say, I want to see that. I still want to see more of Gordon. I still want to see Gordon in the suit. I'm we are getting solid Batman stories from Jim Gordon in the suit. And we're getting great Bruce Wayne stories with him not having amnesia, especially when he makes appearances in other titles and he's got interactions with other characters, in his current amnesiac form. But talk about just absolute wonderful creep factor with Bloom, because we don't have a Joker anymore, or he's not around. Who knows where he actually is? You never believe the Joker's dead. So, we don't know exactly what's going on. So they've added this nice, creepy villain who's got, mystic, supernatural, alien, maybe whatnot going on. But again, it's that whole dealing with things well above and beyond what a normal person should deal with, but it's Batman. He's going to find a way. He's going to push through. He's going to keep persevering. And I think that's a great usage of this villain to really show what the everyday normal person, if they're properly motivated, properly trained, and properly prepared for these situations, they can deal with it. And that's always been, to me, the strength of Batman, that it's the prep, it's the prepared, it's the training, it's that true grit inside Batman that pushes through. Well, Gordon's got that. Gordon still has that. Plus, he's got his team helping him out. I think these are some great stuff going on, in this story of some great Batman is still there. There's still a Batman here. Yeah,
I agree with that. I love seeing Bloom's interaction with like Commissioner Sawyer and how Bloom adds this kind of like scary creep factor, but Sawyer steps up the way that we see her, obviously in titles like Batwoman and stuff like that, the way we know Maggie Sawyer to be. She really has become the figure that we expect Jim Gordon to be, where, there is a leadership to the Gotham City Police Department that you can respect and admire in light of what we know about Gotham. And I really love the writing of Maggie Sawyer in this series because she's a character that means a lot to me. I was sad to see Batwoman go by the wayside as a book. I'm glad to see that elements from that have bled over into other titles in the use of characters like Maggie Sawyer, for example.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Maggie is a great character, and I'm loving just, again, some of these interactions, and we talk about that blending of comedic moments and action and the grippingness. When he's first pouncing on Bloom, he's like, please work, please work, please work, as he's just unloading half a dozen batarangs into the back of his skull. And it didn't work.
Now, what's interesting is, when did Bloom get control of Rookie? Was that during this initial battle when he started firing things through Rookie?
Part of me, when I first read this through, it didn't dawn on me that that's maybe when he gained possession. But I think from very beginning, he's had his meat hooks into him. As you think about it, Bloom is really just electromagnetic energy type of, and that's why they were initially able to capture him. So if he is just more of a creature of, if his powers are based on the electric, based on the thing, he should have been able to hack him from the very beginning. But so long before they ever knew where, the core of Bloom's powers, he already was in the Bat bot. He was already connected and he was already doing his thing. That's kind of how I saw it. But again, I don't know for certain. I think that's kind of a neat thing because, again, it's the whole, makes, when you get this villain who, right at the one point in time when they first capture him, like, oh, hey, there you go, you won. I'm like, what's going to happen next? No, he didn't. He fought through that. So there's stuff to Bloom that is even beyond what they figured out yet.
I really like how Bloom does what a lot of the villains have done in the past. Batman's a symbol, and that was something that Batman always strived for. It was a symbol to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies and to evoke change that way. So with this Bloom storyline, we're seeing Bloom kind of, okay, you're trying to resurrect this symbol. You're using this mechanical robot to do that. And I do think in that sequence where he rips off like the symbol from, I think that might be when he gained control. But I don't necessarily disagree with your assessment as far as what it might be as well. It's interesting to see that could happen. But I love that he takes that moment to rip off that symbol to say, hey, look, because of you, we're going to diminish the symbol of the bat. And we are going to, basically rock the foundation of Gotham to its core. And that's where Bloom holds like this creepy power in what he's doing. And or he, she, whatever, because we don't really know what's under there.
I don't think you really can. You think because I think Bloom is as much plant-like as he is kind of pretending to be with the seeds. I think there is no he or she with Bloom. I think Bloom is just Bloom because I'm trying to figure out. Part of me really thinks Bloom is extraterrestrial. Not mystic or not, mutated human. Part of me really thinks that he came from the stars and there's something else going on. I think he's one of those weird, creepy factors that is Gotham.
Sure. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, I know.
I want to know more.
You don't know, and you're like, okay, and you just. I think it's funny that we're very accepting of we've never had a backstory. We've never had any type of real understanding of who Bloom is. And every single time they start doing stuff, his powers levels seem to kind of increase. And what it is it's not, it's Bloom is only letting you know how much you need to know. It's kind of like those arguments of how much of the craziness of the Joker is pure crazy, or is it just a ruse to get you to lower your guard, or is it how much of Bloom is Bloom? How much of these power levels? What are his real power levels? Have we even started seeing them? And I think that for me is something that makes Bloom such a really cool character, is this great mystery, and that's always expanding. Those are always the really cool Joker stories when you would get a glimmer of something you didn't really think about with Joker. That, yes, he did know who Bruce was. Yes, he knew this. Yes, he was planning this for how many years since the day one. He's always had this idea in mind for Jason Todd, for Bruce, for Dick Grayson, for everybody. And he's laying out all these seeds of destruction. Same thing with Bloom. He's always had, in his mind, I look at him and I see him like he's been one of those creatures that have been watching Gotham from afar, just laying down the seeds, just getting ready to to unleash to his, to take over and make the world his way. And I think that for me has been, kind of a cool introduction of Bloom, where at first I was thinking he's over here, just another crime boss who's got some weird plant thing going on. No, he's not. There's something more here. And even as the more you learn, you're still not 100% certain who and what he is.
The one thing I really like about the character is the mystery that you're talking about. It is at its core great Batman, right? Because they're detective stories. There's something interesting to the mystery about it, whether it's supernatural. I like whether it's supernatural or not. Doesn't really matter to me, but I do like that it has the supernatural tone to it. And you're right in feeling that. Batman has so many great stories. I grew up with 70s Batman, right? And Batman was like this adventurer, and you would get these great stories that did skirt those lines at times where he would do that. You team up with characters like Swamp Thing and stuff like that, and you'd have all kinds of different detective mysteries that some of them were rooted very much in reality. Others of them were very much rooted in the fact that, we're skirting a supernatural line. Never too far, just enough, though, to keep the creep factor into it and the cool elements of that. Batman was more accessible, but his world was just as creepy. and that was the part that was really fun about growing up with Batman during that time. And I do love the shift in where it's at right now. This takes me back to my childhood, but it's very contemporary. And contemporary is really important for me as a reader, too, because I want to feel like these stories are now and current and interesting and relevant to today. I can read the classic stuff. I enjoy it. I enjoy the trip down memory lane and enjoy reading those eras. But to me, when I'm reading today's books, I want them to feel current, contemporary. I want to feel like they've grabbed the core of what I always loved, but modernized it today. This is a very modern story, a modern creepy story. And I love a good creepy Batman story.
Hey, question for you. Because I liked how they went from the creepy Bloom right to Bruce and and his lady friend there. And part of me really thinks she's a bad guy. I don't want her to be. I want Bruce to be happy. But just something, especially these sequences when they're talking about her father, who's the gun runner, and who's the bad guy who may be getting out of prison, and Bruce is going to go with her to the hearings and yada yada, and it's just this sweet, tender moment. But that whenever you have sweet, tender, fun moments involving Bruce Wayne, it usually goes horribly wrong. And I don't think it's going to go horribly wrong that he witnesses her getting killed. I think it's going to go horribly wrong that she's been using him. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that to be, because I want him to be happy. But I don't know, man. I got a bad feeling about this one, and maybe this is the thing that starts him down the path of becoming back to being the Bat again. But especially because you have this great moments between them when he's asking her to marry him, and and he's like, "Hey, I don't care about the past. Let's, we've got this wonderful future. Let's move forward." And
dude,
this is not going to end well.
We're forgetting something though. He knew all of that. She didn't tell him. He told her. Like, I mean, she was ready to reveal it to him. So yay her for wanting to reveal it. But he knew all of it. He was rattling it off.
Yeah.
That's very Bruce Wayne.
That's very Batman.
Yes. I mean, he knew all that stuff. I am convinced there's more of him in there than I mean, yeah, amnesia and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, great. How much of that is self-imposed?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I know that wouldn't be something billionaire Bruce Wayne would know.
No.
That's something that that's something that Batman would know. That didn't even dawn on me, to be honest. I've read this a couple times. That never registered because I was just so focused on her and trying to break down, is she a bad guy? And is she coming clean? Is this going to end poorly for Bruce? And I'm like, oh man, that didn't register with me.
And even if Alfred, he went to Alfred about it, or Alfred gave him the information about it, here's the thing. It's almost not like Alfred to give that information out because Alfred wants him to just be happy and succeed. And Alfred's been protecting that. So it's almost like Bruce had to have sought this out because I don't know that Alfred would have unless there was a lot of prodding from Bruce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in whatever avenue this took, it's fast. It's an absolutely fascinating storyline to me because of it. I'm enjoying the Bruce journey just as much as I'm enjoying the Jim Gordon one. That's what I'm saying about this book. It's it's hitting everything I want. I'm great Jim Gordon, great Bruce Wayne, great Alfred. I love the girlfriend, and I agree with you. Ooh.
Something ain't right there, man. Something bad. Either something bad is going to happen to her or she's a bad guy.
Sure.
I don't know which it is. I don't want it to be either one.
Agreed.
But something's going to happen there.
And here's the thing. The biggest surprise would be that it's neither. Right. And I'm fine with that too. That's the beauty of this whole thing. That would be the biggest shock to go, oh, she's just pleasant and everything's great. I would be happy for that.
It has a happy ending.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would be happy for that to play out that way too, because it would be exactly what we're saying, a huge shock. So who knows how this is going to go. So we go over to the Iceberg Lounge and we get to see Duke and Daryl kind of having conversations. I really like Duke's outfit here.
Yes.
It's funny how the We Are Robin book is a great companion piece to the Batman universe because we kind of see why the kids have the outfits that they do. But I am really loving the focus on Duke in the Batman title. I do want to see them team up somehow. I don't know that he needs to have a mech suit. I don't know that their relationship's going to ever be a traditional Batman and Robin relationship, but man, do I want to see the two team up.
Yeah. I know, especially because part of the reason why I was thinking a mech suit is because of all those spare extra suits that they have.
Sure.
Those different prototypes. Part of me, I can see him taking one, Gordon taking one of those suits, and changing up the color scheme or doing something different with it. But Gordon is one of those big anti-teenagers involved with this, so it'd be kind of tough. It'd be tough to see him endorse a Robin, but I think it's going to be one of those processes where eventually he's going to have to accept the fact that, he can't do this alone. There's a reason Batman always had a Robin. And I think we're going to eventually see that. And I think it's going to be Duke, especially, you talk about different costumes, different looks and all that. And man, I really dig his look. I like the helmet. I like the style, just everything that's going on with this version of Robin.
Now, he gathered information on who they're supposed to meet with. Did he find information about Bloom? Is that what happened here?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's how, and it's, it's kind of, because you figure Penguin's going to have all the information, on this guy. So he's got something. But, part of me also wondered, did he find something about his parents? Did Penguin have info on the parents?
True. Was he supposed to be meeting with the parents?
Maybe that's part of the craziness, or I don't know. again, there's mysteries. I love I love mysteries, but I want to know, man. What did he see? Come on.
That's the cool thing about this book is
because whatever he saw was dramatic to the point where he's got the lockpicks in his mouth and what. Even the showing his eyes kind of bugging out and just everything that, that's huge. Something big and significant just happened to Duke there.
Now, the interesting part is we look at Jerry Powers talking about the Batman program and how it can be replicated elsewhere and how they were looking at the possibility of, if this is successful, being a prototype for other cities and taking back the cities, making these armies. It's an interesting journey on this one because there's a lot of ethics to be discussed here with what's happening now, because now what we're doing is turning the police into a corporate state, which is a whole different ethical problem that Jim Gordon's already tackling with this. It's where he runs into problems with, Big Brother kind of watching. Well, Big Brother's a corporate Big Brother that is watching him. And it's led him to some real problems with what he's doing right now and the relationship that he has with Powers. So I really like where this story is going and the intrigue with it. I wonder what their time frame is. Obviously, I'm sure they've got an end game where they bring Bruce back, right? But man, are they setting up a lot of story before you would get there?
Yeah. Again, it's what's going to happen here, and I think it's interesting that everything is Powers, and of course that you've got the different people who were on the inside track, who were the inside people for Bruce or now working for this Project Batman. They're on the inside. They know what's going on. So they're laying solid groundwork for Bruce to come back. And you think back to, it's the moral question of the hero, the moral question of expanding the operation. And it's the age old statements of it's not the suit that makes the man, it's the man that makes the suit. So you can put somebody else in that tech suit, but it's not going to be Batman. There's a reason, Gordon is doing such a great job is because of Gordon's personality. The reason Bruce was such a great Batman was because of who Bruce is. You put somebody else in that costume, you put somebody else in another city, you're not going to get those same results. And I think that's going to end up being the final downfall for this project is, you kind of go back to Asbats. The final thing that took out Asbats was the return of Batman. I think that's going to be the end of this mech, Batman is the return of the real Batman. I think that's how the transition is going to happen somehow. And again, I don't know when or where or how far down the line it's going to be, but when you start introducing concepts like this, where they're looking to expand, they're looking to go to other cities, they're looking to emulate other heroes and try to figure that kind of stuff out, you're going to have that's where you're going to start getting the corruption. That's when you're going to start losing your way. You're going to start losing, what is the purpose and the absolute mission.
So Maggie Sawyer and Jim Gordon and Jerry Powers debating him going in alone because of everything Bloom's done. He's got a plan and he wants to go in and face Bloom alone as a chance to really show that this Batman works, but also to take down Bloom because he's got a plan for it. What a great moment there. I was so excited. I'm like, yes, I want to see this play out. This really is, I think this is the sequence where Jim Gordon comes into his own as Batman.
Yeah. And again, he's completely right too. He needs to be, Batman. Batman needs to be the symbol. Batman can't lay down, and cower. They can't send in an army after Bloom. Batman's got to be the one to take him down. I think that's, again, it's we talk about Batman is more than just, a person. He is that symbol, and Gordon gets it, and Gordon knows I've got to do this. So I'll definitely, I was, reading that stuff and I was hoorahing right along with him because oh yeah, it's time to throw down.
The seed that was taken from his office. Why do I miss this? Bruce's seed that was taken. Who took that again? Was that Duke?
Yeah, Duke got it.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to remember. I don't remember which issue or how it played out, but when Gordon gave the seed to Bruce, Duke then came and took it.
Got it. I liked his escape from the Batman Fiends, but more importantly, I liked the new Batmobile.
Yeah.
And how it fits the mech. It has to be like this oversized. It was really cool looking.
Well, and again, he's the chopper, and I like the fact that he's like, hey, at least I got to ride my own Batmobile for once. You got at least got one trip where you could do that. So again, it's Gordon being, Gordon being Gordon. He still doesn't lose anything, but it's, again, it was like, I digged it. I was right along with him.
So then we see Blossom Row, and that's where he ends up finding Bloom, and the battle really begins between Bloom and Gordon, with Bloom taking over Rookie. And I can't wait to see where this goes. I love the fact that Gordon has a suit outside of the mech. I think this wouldn't have worked for me if it was the mech all the time. Only
Right.
because of the fact that I really like seeing him, because, we know Gordon to be just a really strong detective, and to see him to be able to get out of the suit and to actually do that kind of, street level work totally fits Gordon, but also totally fits the theme of Batman as a book. And that's where this is also working for me in a balance. They're really trying to make Gordon work as Batman. And I think that's why Dick Grayson worked for me that way. I loved As-Bats at the time because it was giving us what was Batman was the Punisher. That really was the whole purpose of that. There was the whole anti-hero campaign during that time. And it was a smart move. And I love the Punisher. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean that as a negative on the Punisher. But Batman's not the Punisher, and he's not supposed to be. Which is what they gave us with As-Bats to show what that would be like. Sure, you think you want this? Okay, we'll give it to you. You don't really want this. And it made for a compelling story because of that. With Dick Grayson, they explored succession by a son and what that would look like and how he would make it his own while trying to live in his father's shadow. In this case, it would be succession by a city and a former colleague who wasn't really 110% in the loop. Gordon was. They were partners of a sort, but he never knew everything, right?
Right.
This is a great chance for him to try to make his own Batman while echoing what he thought Batman was from his perspective. And I really am loving this story for that. It's a very unique story, and it separates himself from the great stuff they did when Dick Grayson was Batman. And this story, I'm just glued to it because of it.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's funny because you talk about this with the Blossom Row where Bloom was hidden out. And I like the fact that this was something Gordon knew about, but, Julia didn't, and it's something it's a forgotten piece of Gotham. And it's funny because how it's she even comments how it's just this wonderful, pleasant story about how the rich people could help the poor people, and it wasn't an official street; it was just this section, And nowadays Gotham, it's overrun and it's dirty and nasty, and of course that's where Bloom's hiding out. And I like just how the story played out, where this was there's so much more to Gotham than just the pure darkness, but there's always going to be the darkness. There's always going to be that evil, and in these sequences when you go from this very pleasant story to where Bloom is, and he's not as showboaty because there's not an audience. This is just about, something different. It's not about grandstanding. This is between the two of them. This is the end of it all. And even Gordon comments on the different boom in his voice, no grandstanding. And Bloom's like, no, this is it. This is the end of it. This isn't about the story. This isn't about showmanship. This is about me killing you. And, you really do get that evil moment. And then leading right up to the point where he assumes control of the suit and uses it to attack Gordon. This was a great ending where you get this high, pleasant, wonderful, friendly story that immediately turns dark and immediately goes into a betrayal, immediately goes into how is Gordon going to get out of this?
Right. And that's the part that I really am digging about it is, what's going to happen with Rookie? How are they going to get out of this one? It's cliffhangers at their best are the ones where there's so much in this issue, not just that cliffhanger. There's so many cliffhangers in this issue that you want to know more about that this book just remains gripping. I hope Scott Snyder's got a lot more in him.
Oh God, yeah. I love his work on Batman. This has just been absolutely, this, and yeah, I'm really digging this Bat universe. I'm digging just all the parts of it, but Batman is really just something that's been something amazing.
Absolutely.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. Please feel free to call in about anything comics related or pop culture relating to the DC universe you'd like to chat about. We love having you part of the show. We have an amazing Facebook group community, and I want to shout them out. They're actually, as of the time that we did this recording, I did a posting in our Raging Bullets Facebook group about this, but also on our Raging Bullets Facebook page. They're doing a Secret Santa thing, and I know we're kind of close to the end of it, but if you want to go in and join, it's just $30 a person, and you're in your final days. So you want to, I think it's Tuesday is our cutoff on that one. So if you're downloading the episode and you want to join in on this one, please jump over there and be a part of the Secret Santa. Jeremy and the whole crew over there that are participating, I think it's just a really cool idea. I'm sorry we didn't get to shout it out sooner, but they're doing a really cool Secret Santa thing over there. And I love that this group has, like I said, branched so far beyond the podcast. We're lucky enough to have our branding a part of it, but it really has become their community over there. And I love that it's just such a great group of people that have just become friends, and they talk all kinds of comics, pop culture, television, games, you name it. And it's a real safe, fun community. I get a lot of my news from there, just because I'm on the go a lot, and it's just great to see what people are posting and chatting about. But I also get recommendations. People will post things that they're really digging and they're reading right now, but also questions about history of characters in Marvel and DC and all through comics. So I love the fact that it's just kind of an open community where people can talk about whatever they want. And I just want to shout out that wonderful group. That's our Facebook group. And besides the Facebook group, you can find out about us at ragingbullets.com, which feeds our Twitter. That's where I always post show information. We have a Facebook fan page I mentioned earlier. We're on Google+. You can really find us anywhere. So we love having you part of the show, and please follow us in whatever way is the easiest for you in social media. Jim, we are sponsored this episode, of course, by dcbservice.com and instocktrades.com. What is going on over at dcbservice.com?
Well, of course, we got the wonderful bundles, the 12 new Vertigo issues, 50% off, only $24.38, so you can keep following these great Vertigo titles. But we definitely have to shout out over at Hero Tomorrow Comics. This is the Apama, the Undiscovered Animal, Volume 1 of the trade paperback. 30% off, only $13.99. Again, this is based off of that great movie Hero Tomorrow that we talked about. We're going to have the people back on again to talk about this trade that's out there. This is a really fun, cool book. Give it a try. Hero Tomorrow Comics, Apama, the Undiscovered Animal.
We're going to do a follow-up with them specifically on the Apama comics. So if you are a fan of the show, please consider picking this up to support them. They're great people. It's a Cleveland filmmaker, and they basically put together this wonderful movie, Hero Tomorrow, and the support comic now, Apama, which builds a much larger world and universe to it. It's great to see Apama just become this farther-reaching property that we'd love to support it. So please consider picking it up. I'd love your thoughts. Call in on it. I'd love you to be a part of that discussion. So please feel free to read it, pick it up, call in on it, and something I'd like to talk about again in the future. It's great to see this underground movement of basically comics and film working together. And I actually love the fact that the comic spun out of the film. When a lot of times you hear about comics spinning into a film, it's great that this film had this wonderful idea of a comic going on throughout it, and that actually became a thing. And I really like that. I like that it's kind of the reverse of what we usually see, and it's great to see it being a property that is utilizing it in such a unique and interesting way. And the comic's excellent. The artwork's fantastic. Really enjoy the story, and I'm excited. We're going to talk about it again on a follow-up show soon. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we're going to be supporting Apama. And if you have an opportunity, please pick it up yourself. We'll do that as a pop culture and whatnot. InStockTrades.com has the Batman, the Golden Age Omnibus hardcover. I cannot recommend this enough. Those original early Detective Comics and Batman stories were really gritty. It's great to see kind of what the foundation of Batman was back in the day. We shout out Bill Finger. We shout out Bob Kane. These are guys who worked together Jerry Robinson. I mean, just amazing stories that were done by these creators. And I'm not doing justice by even shouting out those names. 784 pages. It is $75 regularly, 50% off, only $37.50. This is the time to pick it up at that 50% off price point. It's a chance to really get it at a steal and get a lot of great Batman history. If you are a Batman fan, never read those stories, now is the time. So head on over to InStockTrades.com and pick that book up. Jim, our next episode, we're going to continue doing what we're doing right now. We're going to talk some comics, as we start getting caught up on more of our comics. So we will be back. We'll do one more November episode. So we will be back next week, and we will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Seguin. Sometime earlier, Seguin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Seguin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.